Okay, ready whenever you are.
Okay, meeting of the Leadville Historic Preservation Commission is called to order at 4:04 PM on May 14th, 2024. We have a roll call.
Commissioner Brian Combs,
Here.
Commissioner Whittington,
Here.
Commissioner Lindquist,
Here.
Commissioner Edwards, Commissioner Spillman,
Here.
alternate Vladimir, alternate Mercado.
Here. Okay, so next, approval of the agenda. Any revisions to the agenda?
I think Lori and I both have some.
Okay,
Like run those by you. if that's
Sure.
okay. So under updates, I'd like to give an update on the city council decision for 206th Street. Then on 3B, this is fill advisory member vacancy. We just like to just change that to discussion of the member vacancy. And I'd also like to give, I'm sorry, we should also probably add item C there, election of chair. Or discussion of election of chair. And then I'd also like to, I can also do some updates or new continued business, but I'd like to talk with this group about potential code amendment on HPC decisions being on the consent agenda for city council. So sorry that that's all good things to discuss.
okay,
And I just got an update under housekeeping, so that's not, we don't need to add it to the agenda.
okay.
Um,
Okay, any other revisions, or do I hear a motion for approval of the agenda with those revisions?
I move that we approve the amended agenda. I'll second that.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wait, is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Hearing none, moving on to housekeeping items. Lori?
I just, first of all, again, I'm gonna apologize for the agenda, because obviously the HPC appointments is also down under the. So, sorry for that implication, but I did include in your packet, I just didn't put it on the housekeeping items. The CLG news and training opportunities for May, that's in your agenda, I just didn't note it on the agenda. If you have any of the trainings that you want to go to, you can sign up. If there's a cost, just let me know and we can find it.
Great,
That's all I have.
that's it. Okay, then moving on to updates. First, the workshop, research the history of your home. Stuart?
Well, I think we're making great progress on that. We're moving forward with everything. If anybody wants a copy of the flyer, I'm happy to distribute a few of those out here. We have started distributing these around town, so you might see them in some windows.
Okay,
My plan right now is to go to community coffee tomorrow morning and announce it and hand them out. Also, I don't know what the protocol is to attend a city council meeting, but my thoughts are I would like to go to city council next week and just during the public comment period, advise them that we are having a workshop and present them with some flyers so that they can not only hopefully attend, but see that what we're doing in terms of public outreach. So assuming that's okay, I'm going to do that next week as well. Jennifer and Marufo from the library and Chapin and I met here yesterday just to kind of talk things through, make sure we were going to be able to hook computers up. Lori, I don't know how the RSVPs are going, really.
I was gonna add to that.
I mean, we really haven't advertised other than the library's social media.
Have 4 new ones and then 1 I received a while back. So we already have a total of 5 keys.
Okay, and there is, Finn from the paper called me last week and did a short interview about the workshop. I think he also talked to Jennifer, so I'm anticipating we're gonna get some coverage in the paper on Thursday, which will really be good.
The flyer looks great, Stuart.
Thank you, thank the library.
Yeah.
I made some edits, but that's about it.
Yeah, that sounds great. 5 RSVPs seems solid for 2 weeks in advance without it even having been in the paper yet or
Yeah.
anything. Is that all for the workshop?
Yep.
Okay, then, historic walking tour
Well,
development.
can I back up one
Oh,
moment?
sure.
I am concerned about timing on this. It starts at 5 o'clock.
Mhm.
And I think it's gonna take us a minute, depending on what the numbers look like to get the room arranged. So if I could ask that we maybe have a hard stop next week at 4:45, so we can get ready for that meeting and not be doing that when people are showing up. I don't know if that's possible, but
Do you know anything else that's on the agenda for next week?
Or
Was it actual meeting part of it on the 28th, not next week, sorry?
Next meeting?
Yeah, meeting.
we do not have any.
Because And I don't have anything pressing on the agenda, so I think that's the big one.
okay, I just want to be respectful of the people coming, that we're not fumbling around trying to get ready while they're, watching us.
I briefly discussed with the which doing a work session on the capital project on that meeting, but I have not received scope from him. So that's the only thing TBD is if he submits today, tomorrow for a work session, we may have a work session on that meeting. But it's pretty tight.
Yeah, that'll be good for us to have in mind. By historic walking tour development?
Haven't done a lot the last 2 weeks. We gave a summary of the 4 apps we've been looking at to Stephanie at the paper. And we're gonna try to sit down and come up with a decision on which app works best for both organizations, if in fact we do move forward together. So we're gonna meet again next week and do that and continue to talk about, what a contract might look like between the two groups and all the copywritten material and how that works. And so it was kind of quiet the last 2 weeks, but we'll be moving ahead again next week on it.
Okay,
I would like to briefly mention that at city council again next week while I'm doing that, assuming everybody's okay with that. Not a big update, but just to let them know we're working on it.
yeah, I think it's a good idea to just let city council know that we continue to operate and trying to advance, some new initiatives.
Okay,
Do you think you're gonna need any money from city council to help fund it?
I think we are.
Maybe you could drop a hint.
Yeah, just give them a possible.
Yeah, I will do that. I'm just gonna do it in the public comment period. I'm gonna try to get on the agenda. I'm just gonna take a couple quick minutes and give them an update.
Any other questions or comments about, walking tour? Okay, Laura already mentioned the appointments, but welcome to Stuart and to Steve Mercado as our new members of the commission, as your first official meeting. It's exciting to have you all here, and thank you for serving. And then looks like there's a reminder, El Pomar Grant Awards will be announced. What is that, next Wednesday? Next Tuesday. And so that will be for the walking tour, is that correct?
No,
Or
that
is
was the
that-
Lake County.
Oh, that
Community
was the lake,
Development,
oh,
which
El Pomar, that's ours for that. Yeah,
That's
we
yours.
submitted that so long ago that I.
But I'll-
Grants go.
Anything you get, I will take for the walk.
Yeah,
Except for the walking tour.
We finished that like 3 months ago, but with the schedule. Whew. All right, well, that'll be,
That was honestly for all of it. I literally forgot. And then I went, oh, wait, isn't that coming up in May? So I
Yeah.
think we better put it on there because you guys may find out before I do. So just to give us some kind of warning to be looking for that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna try to check out their website this weekend and see.
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, well, yeah, and then that'll determine what we need to do in terms of either additional funding or whether we're fully funded for the projects we have.
We'll know what's going on.
Yeah, okay. Chapin, did you want to do the update on the Sixth Street project?
Yes, so the update is that at city council last week, 200 East Sixth Street rehabilitation project was unanimously approved. And that was the condition of approval. Differentiation between the original southern facade and the southwestern corner facing facade and the new western wall.
Okay, great. Then did you want to go ahead and do the thing you just got potential for HBC items to be on the consent?
Yeah, that's a good segue. Thanks. So after that project, I actually did mention to city council while I still have the floor. If city council is comfortable with projects like this, going forward, being on the consent agenda, at city council, that is something that staff would like to explore. Context of that is that some city council members have expressed concern with the length of meetings. There's a lot going on. Entire staff's getting things done, things are going on the agenda, meetings are getting longer. And so there was some concern expressed over that, and so one of the ways that staff is trying to think about how creatively how to address that is using the consent agenda at city council, for items that do not require a public hearing, or for items that, where staff is expecting the city council not to have concern over, to be on the consent agenda, so multiple items can get approved all in one motion. And there would still be, staff reports, and material, application materials, et cetera. And this extends to things like city council resolutions and stuff, or other matters, temporary use permits, et cetera. So I mentioned that to city council. What I'd like to do is work with the city attorney this year at some point to draft an ordinance that would still require a public hearing for certificates of appropriateness at the Historic Preservation Commission, but then that would be a decision versus recommendation. And that decision would be forwarded to city council at their next regular meeting and placed on the consent agenda. And then if city council has any concerns with the decision by HPC, then that can be called up, I guess by a majority vote by city council, off the consent agenda, and they could be then discussed, and then they could either, make a motion to approve it then, or they could schedule for a de novo hearing. To set it, basically not approve your decision if they want to just schedule their own public hearing, or get scheduled for de novo hearing. So essentially it gives them three options. It's in their package, so they can approve it on the consent agenda, call it up for discussion, and then approve it, or schedule for de novo hearing, and they can approve it or deny it there. But with the volume of COAs that I think we're starting to see come through, and we still have more in the pipeline based on the code amendments that were approved last summer for the exterior modifications in the historic district. That volume is increasing, and which is, reflected on the HPC's agenda and the city council's agenda. So this will be a way to keep these small, especially smaller projects that are not contentious, from kind of burdening the time at the city council meetings.
What kind of feedback did you get from them?
I haven't seen any concerns yet. This was actually the second time that I mentioned it to them. So I will mention it again in my planning department monthly report next week, and then I can already have city administrator, mayor approval to proceed working with the city attorney on a draft. And I have an agreement from the HPC, but it basically might have limit to the code would have kind of larger impact process.
Would
I
it
think that's
say-
an excellent idea.
Would it say in that, when you say that the HPC would make a decision and then forward that decision to city council, does that mean? How can it be worded where, because I would assume that the HPC decision is still not a final decision until it is decided that the council agrees with HPC, so would it be a final decision? I get a little confused in that area.
Yeah, it would be worded as decision, most likely, instead of recommendation. So that would be one of the key changes, and then the big part is the public code would say that the public hearing is not required at city council.
Or city council, but it is required to go to city council.
So city council still retains ultimate decision-making authority,
I guess that's what I was.
but in the code, it's an HPC decision, not a recommendation to city council. public hearing HBC, but not, it's no longer at city council. But it's still on their agenda, it's still in their packet, they still have the opportunity to either uphold or your decision via the consent agenda or call it off calendar, schedule it. And we'll-
So they'd be ratifying the decision?
Yep, give
Yeah,
us their
it's-
consent to it, basically.
Yeah, the way I've seen that before is it's uphold. But I could, well, I mean, we're obviously, it's not a lot of text that would be changing in the code, it would be a relatively small amendment, but I'll make sure that obviously when we get this drafted, we will put this in front of HBC for your review language.
I'm surprised they're willing to go for it.
I am too, that's why I asked that. Don't Do that. I see them trusting us enough to go with that decision without diving into it.
But here's the important thing is that this last project went really smoothly. There was, I reiterated city council with this applicant, took advantage of the opportunity to come from HBC twice for a work session and then for a public hearing, responded to comments. So I think that it was a good opportunity for city council to see, okay, yeah, we didn't have any concerns with this project, but we just spent, 30, 45 minutes on it. So it was a good opportunity to say,
That's a good-
these are the kind of projects that we could put on the consent agenda.
It seemed to me the city council's going through the exact same process we are. So this makes total sense.
Yeah, and as long as they see that we're doing, good work and making reasonable decisions, then hopefully they'll decide that they don't have to duplicate that. That'd be nice.
Be nice. for them.
Yeah, and certainly save them some time and
Well,
say,
I think my thing is, trust the commission you put together. City council needs to trust the commission that they put in place to do the deep dive. And shape and now so that HBC can actually go deep dive into that as far as how it relates to code. So maybe they're willing to trust us a little more.
yeah, and that'll just become more and more the case as we get these surveys,
Correct.
more supportive documentation.
And
But
have that.
yes,
And I think having Joey on the commission also helps us a little bit with him being able to explain things, maybe that should have questions. But,
I had a question, are we in a place where we're gonna need a compliance officer of some kind?
It's a good question. So where we're at right now is we started receiving a bulk of complaints around October, November last year. And there was averaging somewhere between like 5 and 10 complaints at any time that we were managing. And this is following the code amendment that was passed in became effective in August. Regarding exterior modifications in the city. And so the city had an enforcement officer previously, right now, the community service officers, the 2 community service officers in the police department, that is their responsibility and we confirmed that with, city council, mayor and city administrator, that zoning code enforcement should be conducted by community service officers. So, essentially set the program last fall, that I believe now is in full effect.
Oh.
We have, so over the past 6 months, we have, now meet twice a month with community service officers every other week. We have, forms, and we've gone through all the legal language for, what is on the form, so in other words, you have courtesy warning form, then you have like a citation form, which essentially is a summons to go to court. So it should be kind of like similar to like receiving a traffic warning versus a traffic citation. And all of that is based on the code, which says you have 10 days to comply from initial warning and writing. And then we have the discretion to be flexible.
Right.
People are cooperating. And then fines starting at $250 and up to like $2,600. So at this, oh, the other thing I should mention is that the Lake County Building Department for projects that or for basically issues that require coordination with the building department or, there's likely a building code violation also, like we did, some property owner did obtain a building permit, so we're not only contacting them about certificate of appropriateness or a zoning site, we're also contacting them about the building permit requirement. The county was trying to hire a code enforcement officer for zoning also, and that person is now staffed.
Wow.
And so they'll actually be attending our next meeting, which actually is, I think it's tomorrow. For Thursday for enforcement. So I would say that 6 months ago, we did not have an enforcement program. It was essentially just me, and I didn't really have time.
Right.
But recognize that, and now we're using community service officers and the county's code enforcement officer. I'd say now we have a code enforcement program. Now we have citations that have been mailed via certified letter. We have people responding to that. And I think we even have one that's proceeding to an actual citation court summons. So I would say we have somewhere between 10 and 15 in progress right now. Complaints that we've received from, right, some come from HBC members, some come from city council members, some come from members of the public that were responding.
Any of those HPC related, or are they just
Yes.
general code?
No, yes, I would say at least a third of those are certificates of appropriateness, like something that requires certificate of appropriateness, like siding replacement or window replacement or even a re-roof.
Is that something that could be shared once a month in the agenda or in our packet? Just so we can sort of see what's coming in?
Yeah, I think we definitely could do that. We should get there. I think we're with this transition right now. We're not there right now. We'll probably need to focus on that because Alex Willis, the new planner, starts next Tuesday, and I'll be spending a lot of time training him. So we're transitioning a lot of roles right now. So I think we should strive for that and maybe put it on an agenda template so we can track the number. Hopefully we can have that up and running here as a standard practice.
Oh, awesome. You have an example of one of these
Yeah, so I'll show you the,
real quick?
People who got in trouble.
No names.
I mean, this is all, everything we do is public records. Confidentiality here. Let me just, reshare this. Well, I'm just gonna hide, I'm just gonna hide that for now. This is the list. These are the ones that have been resolved.
Right.
So this is shared with the police department and with, the county's. So I'll give you an example. I'll just use like a re-roof. It's pretty simple. We received a complaint on or 30. CSOs went to the house, they spoke with construction workers, but they couldn't get a hold of like the property. They looked up the contact information that they had from the statewide database the police department has. And they mailed a courtesy warning. Let's see here, and then property owner essentially contacted me. He received a certified letter. I spoke with him and I emailed him the permit application form. So on his courtesy warning, he has 10 days to comply. So the main thing here with CSOs is that we talked about in our last meeting last week is follow up. So we've essentially established like a 3 or 4 step process. So just making sure that step 4 is actually happening. So I would say, and it's a whole new program working with, cooperation between police department, building department. So I'd say, I mean, we're definitely making progress. There's been some kinks and could have gone faster, could have gone slower, but I think the main thing is kind of like that. So someone doesn't comply within 10 days, making sure they're having these regular meetings with the community service officer where they're coming back, they're saying, hey, on these particular items, we drove by, nothing has happened, do you have the permit form? They say, no, I haven't, and then that's when courtesy, I'm sorry, the citation go.
Next step, right? Good, great.
That looks fantastic.
And that's
And certainly did not exist before, to my knowledge. So it's wonderful to have multiple sets of eyes, making sure that things aren't happening without approval. Let's see, are we ready for new and continued business? Is that all on all that, Chapin?
Yeah.
So new HPC applicant Jennifer Marufo. Is this who you've been working with at the library? Steve?
Yes.
So should we discuss her application and the advisory member vacancy that has been created by Stewart's shift from advisory to full commission?
The way that I would answer that is no and yes.
No and yes.
So we should,
Thank you, Chapin.
yeah, we should, so this is created vacancy, so, this appointment for, the replacement of the advisory member, is an HPC decision, so it's not a city council decision, so the code says that the advisory members serve at the pleasure of the HPC.
Okay.
In their functions. I do believe, and I'm not saying that this has always been done in the past, but I believe it would be good practice to advertise any vacancy, that we have in any commission period. Whether it's appointed by city council or HPC. So I would recommend that we advertise this position to make it fair to all community members. And, so that everyone has the same opportunity to apply.
Alright, yeah, because we already have Steve's application from our previous openings and then this one, and then we advertise and then with the potential for then aiming to fill maybe at like our first June meeting or something. Would that be a
Probably,
timeline?
normally I run the advertisements for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And when we ran the advertisement for Stewart's position and Steve Mercado's position, there was not a vacancy on the advisory board, so we couldn't run that ad at the same time.
Yeah,
So we have yet to run a ad
specific.
for the advisory member.
Yeah,
So I think we should give that 2 weeks, because that's what we normally run the ad for.
Okay.
So where's my calendar? Obviously, I can't get that in the paper until next week.
Maybe
So yes, at the June 11th.
meeting. So yeah, we'll aim to fill that advisory member to see what if we get any new applications, consider the existing ones and fill that vacancy at the June 11th meeting. And that advertisement should probably list, specifically what the advisory. Since it's a little bit different.
this is one of those things that the code is just silent on. It doesn't
Yeah.
really talk about advertising the positions, but I think it's good practice.
Yes,
And I think we should just kind of go the same way that we do when we have an opening on the commission itself.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
So do you know if Jennifer is interested in being on the advisory board or if she is
Yes.
applying to be on the commission?
She came into City Hall yesterday and asked me about that, and she is interested in the advisory member position.
Okay,
Where's Alpine Drive? Is that within the historic district? Or anything,
Where?
Alpine Drive? It's where
I
she
think
lives.
it's probably past Safeway something.
Yeah.
Down that way.
I'll be listening.
Okay.
But it's not.
Not.
Doesn't matter, just curious,
Right,
right? Just
especially on the
curious.
advisory, she's not voting member, so that's.
I'm just curious.
mhm. Okay, any objections to this process we've just discussed, advertising and then Steve?
Speak for 3 minutes.
Is it on this?
Topic.
Yeah,
Your nickname with me is on topic.
yeah. Yes.
It's 10 to 5. My name is Steve Prostash. I live at 30 East Third Street. Well, I'd like to talk about two things. One, when I talked to this gentleman, before he was, received the vote, he told me that Steve told him about the, position. Is that true? Okay, and now, in talking here, we find out that Stuart works with this lady that put in an application. So to me, it seems people can do whatever they want. But, I've run for political office several times. It seems like some issue always comes up and then I back to showing. So we're at the first 5 here. I got 2 more minutes. I thought I'd talk about a little bit more about my reputation. And one of the things that occurred was, I don't have enough time to talk about the animal abuse charge, which is bizarre. But not from what I did, city did. But I can talk about another charge they charged me with, was abuse of, harassment of a woman. And, that went to court, and, the prosecutor was a woman also. And so they give you time to talk, make a deal. So I went to talk to her, not to make a deal, it's just innocence. And, so she started reading what the officer wrote. She chuckled. She said, well, this isn't harassment. I said, I know that. And so she said, well, we'll move to dismiss this immediately. So I'm at the second. So repeatedly in town, I've been charged with things and they've usually been dismissed because there is no such boundaries for such cases. So I have a very poor reputation in town. There's things I don't know about my reputation that flare up. When I ran for office last fall, shortly around the time I turned in my application for the to run for the position, a woman who is known as, I got this nickname from one of the town locals, Maytag, because he said she's known as an agitator, was screaming at me at Safeway for being an animal abuser. And she did that twice. We had 2 encounters there. And I had to call the police and, what can you do? So, thank you kindly for listening to me, and that's my 3 minutes.
Can I make one point of clarification?
Sure.
Just to let you know, I do not work with Jennifer Marufo. I'm retired. I don't work with anyone. She's just volunteering to help with the workshop that the commission is doing on the 28th.
Oh, you said you worked with her at the library.
Well, she's helping us. I'm
The other day they were,
working with her again.
Relationship.
I know her and she's helping with the workshop. Just to clarify.
Relationship.
And I invited Steve to apply, but then he put in an application, but then we went through the process of advertising it through the newspaper for the set period. And so, any of us can invite anybody we want to apply. That doesn't mean they're going to get on
I said people can do what they want.
I think another reason that we are going to have for this position is that very thing. We don't want it to be, I work with this person on a specific project, they're great, let's put them on the board. No, that means let's throw them into the ring and see who else applies for it. We must go ahead and apply. And to be fair, for all the reasons you just stated. Thank you.
Thank you all, for those comments. Shall we move on to election of chair? And will we need a vice chair as well?
I think we do.
Joey is currently the vice chair, is that correct?
But
Technically?
I believe he said he didn't want to continue in that position.
Yeah,
Right. To me, in code, if I'm not mistaken, the only officers, if you want to call them that the HPC has, is the chair and vice chair.
mhm.
And that's, you know, I remember when I first started, I believe Simone was actually a secretary, but the staff has really taken the minutes from that, and we don't have a need for a secretary. We're only a 5-person commission, so it doesn't make sense to have one of those. I mean, if you already have 2 officers and then you have a secretary, it doesn't make any sense. And if I'm not mistaken, it's add 2. The chickens, check it. Okay.
I would, just offer it. Probably is a good idea to have all members in attendance, and we select the
That
chair and vice chair.
Should we wait until Joey is?
Is put that on future agenda.
Okay.
And, you know, and ask everyone if they're expecting to be there at that meeting, so we can try to shoot for a meeting if everyone's in attendance.
Okay,
And that could be
If you're going to do
28th.
that, it's going to be mid-June before we can
oh,
do
cause you're gonna be out of town next for
for the
archaeology.
next 2 meetings.
Okay, so we should do that on the second meeting of June.
Wait, and then,
Do we-
yeah, I guess there's,
We really,
not
we
June,
really
right?
need everybody here. I mean, it's unusual to have everybody here.
We just finally got seated, full commission. So-
That's a discretion. Commission.
Yeah, you
I think
guys-
that's- I think that that's staff's recommendation, if possible, I would suggest having, if you're electing officers to have, try to do it in a meeting where you have everyone in attendance. I don't think that's required.
Is there a mechanism to vote on these kind of things remotely? Through email or otherwise?
I thought about that. I mean, the C code speaks to that, otherwise I'd have to review the bylaws.
And Steve, you won't be able to be even via Zoom at either one of those meetings,
That is correct.
making sure.
would it be worth trying to gauge who among the commission has interest in being chair, whether there's,
We're the conversation right now.
If
If
there's
you don't
only-
make a decision, the discussion could definitely.
as if there were only one, for example, then it might not
Sure.
matter.
You're right, especially if you talked about it right now. So maybe you should just go ahead and talk about that.
Does anyone have interest in being chair?
I think you'd be a great chair.
I'm not 100% sure I'm allowed to be chair.
We were checking on that, I think the chair residence is the only one that's specified in there. I'm sorry. for Giving you a code like.
Yeah. This is deep dive.
Let's see if I did last. I'm putting this on screen. So, just so everyone knows where this comes from, this is Title II of the Code of Administration Personnel, some of the Historic Preservation Commission chapter, so it's same places, planning, zoning commission, et cetera. And this is under organization rules. So the HPC shall elect chairperson, vice chair, serving 1-year term, or successive terms. HPC shall adopt bylaws. Say anything about.
Yeah. Is it in the bylaws?
Wondering, our bylaws so old that I'm wondering,
It does say somewhere that 2 members need to be residents.
It does, it's right
or maybe that's exactly what I'm thinking. At least 2 members shall be residents, but it doesn't say that anybody holding an office.
Does the code define resident?
It does somewhere, but it's basically your permanent residence, 6 months out of the year, something's supposed to be on your driver's license, supposed to be. That's your. Main residence. So, but I don't see where it says. The chairperson.
Yeah.
And vice chair have to be those 2, it's just 2 members of the commission.
I would agree.
I would do it. The only problem potentially is that I tend to miss or be remote for the winter meetings when it is snowy. And so if we had a vice chair who would be happy to to conduct the meetings in person on those days, then I would be fine with being chair. Or being nominated up for election to be chair. Does anyone else have a desire?
I'm willing to take either position.
And I think if that's the case,
Yeah.
if say, for instance, without here, Scott was chair and Steve was vice chair, Steve is more than likely going to be here during the winter times that could be just stepping right up into that. Your decision. Anybody else have any thoughts on it? Or any preferences, or,
It's good to me.
I think those are two excellent decisions.
and I don't think we could go wrong in either of the two.
Chapin, do you think we should wait until we have a full commission to take a vote?
Yeah, the code's decided on. How you go about.
Yes, do you have any recommendations for procedure?
So.
We haven't done this in 4 years or something.
After this discussion, we have a majority, those that are here represent the majority of the commission. It sounds like we have a majority consensus of the ones that are present for those seat selections.
I feel like if you guys wanted Joey's input on what he thought, that's totally up to you. It's obvious that Joey's not gonna be chair or vice chair, but if you wanted his thoughts, I think that would be a decision you guys would make, that if it's worth waiting to hear his thoughts, or if you just wanna make a decision.
You asked the question if anyone, anybody else is interested. I don't know if Joey's interested or not. And so I will note that he must recuse himself on public hearing because of the city council seat.
I think we decided at one of the previous meetings that he is not interested.
Exactly.
This
John, sure that we all discussed it already and then decided.
I think he said that.
Chair or vice chair.
Do we want to wait for Joey's input and to have everybody here before we take a vote on the officers?
I think
agree
we've
with-
been hobbling along for a long time now. We should get this over with.
And I
Okay,
agree with Steve, the likelihood of getting a full group here is unlikely. And unless we can do it electronically, I would suggest we.
All things you have to.
do we need a motion for this? A motion?
Yeah, I think it should be a roll call vote for me.
Is that a motion for the individuals or to just have the election?
Polly,
I think you could, make a motion to just be very clear, this is on the agenda, if we haven't done that already.
Oh.
Because I think we said, discussion of chair. So, because we're all comfortable, this was on the agenda, then we could, do a motion to elect a chair and do a roll call vote.
Could we do it as a slate, chair and vice chair, the way you do for president, or do we have to do each individual?
You said it was a slate.
yeah, so
Yeah,
I guess a
so-
motion with both. Yeah, so that we can just vote once, right? multiple times.
We could do, they're not attached.
It's not like it's gonna take a time
Yeah.
either way, but I mean, if we can come to an agreement about. I mean, if somebody nominates a slate of one of us as the chair, one is the vice chair, and then the two of us involved accept that, then why not just vote on the slate rather than taking
Totally
votes
agree.
on the individual positions?
Do you want to have further discussion to clarify that?
No, I mean, wait. I think you're all aware, I'm gonna be missing the next two meetings. And I won't be able to participate in any way that I'm aware of, unless there's some electronic type of vote or something that needs to be done. So that's something that maybe ought to be considered. But after that, probably be at pretty much all the meetings.
either ways.
And so I'm comfortable with Scott as chair and me as vice chair. I'm comfortable going the other way. It doesn't, either way is fine. I guess it's up to the rest of you to decide what you like.
Well, I'll make a nomination. Is that the appropriate process right now?
Unless there's any other discussion.
All right, well, given Steve's absence for the next 2 months, I would make a nomination for Scott as chair and Steve as vice chair.
Is that official enough for you?
And yeah,
Close enough.
nomination.
Commissioner,
That's okay.
And Scott, good note, we haven't observed this in the past, but it's for a 1-year term. And so we can always revisit
Right.
and
You
review,
okay
just
with that?
swap back.
You okay with it, Scott?
Yeah, that's
What do
fine.
what do you think would happen in the winter if you were on Zoom? Would you want me to run the meetings?
I think it would go more smoothly if somebody in person ran the meetings. Yeah.
Don't you feel Marcia in this thing right here?
Yeah, if that would
Right
be,
now, we're out here in March.
yeah, as long as that would be allowed with the chair technically like present, but via Zoom, but I guess I could always just like designate or like abdicate temporarily.
So, it sounds okay to me.
Okay.
Is there a second to that motion then?
I will second that.
Do you want any more discussion or should I do a roll?
I'm ready for a roll call.
Let's vote.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards, not here. Commissioner Lindquist,
Yes.
Commissioner Stillman,
Yes.
Commissioner Whittington,
Yes,
Commissioner Frank Pond,
yes,
and I'll take alternate Flatiger,
Yes.
senior. Okay, that was unanimous. I believe we have a new chair.
Thank you.
Dr. Phil. Chair, Steve, what do you, thank you. Full commission, we have a chair, we have a vice chair, we'll be back.
Yeah.
feels like we've made some progress.
Yeah. So then in June, we'll be totally full when we fill our advisory. Let's see, we have public comment for items not on the agenda. Before we get to that, I wanted to just check in on our 2024 suggested goals real quick at the bottom here. Is there any anything we want to talk about or plan to put on a future agenda regarding those goals? We have good progress with the walking tour, the researching your home workshop, grants in progress, etc. But just wanted to check.
Is there going to be any progress on design standards later in the year, or is that beyond?
It's a great question. I think my focus right now is zoning code amendments, related to affordable housing. There's 2 ordinances that I'm trying to get through, like the zoning commission, and city council. On the heels of that will be the demolition, like dangerous buildings section will be, we've had several work sessions on. So that would begin into the fall for that ordinance. And then really start working on comprehensive planning going into 2025, which means kind of the fourth quarter of this year. So those are ordinances, some big projects that have to happen for the planning department. In terms of design standards, I think the question to ask ourselves is, do we want to work on design standards for individual character areas as the survey, the cultural resource surveys for those areas come out? I think that would be tough because we kind of need to have our all of our area surveys. We understand what are the differences between these different areas, and we want to establish character areas for like design standards for individual character areas. For example, West Eighth and Ninth Street certainly have a different character in terms of the architecture typology than in other parts of the historic district, Banger Grove Center. So if we want to have design standards that are more tailored to certain areas that have unique character, breaking that down, the residential areas down in multiple areas, something more commercial character, for example. Then that really starts lending itself to pushing design standards, later as our, a couple of years from now, as our coastal resource survey project is wrapping up, we have, our entire historic district survey. We understand what our boundary is, we're comfortable with it, or we have our boundary, our boundary modified. And then we can start, talking about if we want to divide our historic district into visual character areas or not. And then I think we'd be in a good place for design standards. So talking out loud a bit there, but that's probably some things we need to think through as we think about design standards.
Maybe they don't, maybe number 3 doesn't belong on our 2024 goals then.
It might be a 2025 because that's when surveys will be wrapping up, the short context is
Yeah.
gonna be wrapping up. I think that's not a bad idea.
Mhm.
Even putting up. We get from these
Mhm.
surveys. Drive that.
Yeah, and the surveys will be able to inform our decision making, even in the absence of design standards before that. But then to actually come up with some comprehensive design standards that we're comfortable with, I think you're right, that we'll need to wait until all, or at least a more substantial portion of the surveys come in.
Yeah, I think that we were making more, more information-based, research-based decisions when it comes to like land use applications, certificates of appropriateness. If we were to come up with design standards for some and not for all, then that might be our decision-making could be challenged with being more arbitrary. We have to be, careful of tripping into those waters. And I think the flip side of this is that right now we're using the Secretary of Interior standards, which, apply broadly across the entire country and are nowhere near custom, for Leadville, and they are cumbersome to navigate. And especially for as long as for staff and commissions, we're all used to working with them together. We do have some, as you've seen in your staff reports that are coming to you, we can look at the Traders Market project that just came before you. There were 10 design standards that applied in our code. There were really modeled, it was very similar language to the 10 design standards in the Secretary of Interior standards. So our code right now, has 10 standards that are model after federal standards. So we have some, but it's, it can be, subject to a lot of interpretation, it can be very subjective. So that is kind of the flip side of that. If we were to come up with design standards sooner versus later, we would probably try to come up with design standards that are they're applying broadly outside of Harrison Avenue to all of the historic districts, everything except for Harrison, and not broken down by character area, which could be done at a later time.
Yeah, maybe the thing to do would be to revisit this when we get the first survey in and sort of see what information we have, what we think we can do with that, and then probably kick the design standards discussion a year or two down the road, but sort of see whether it would be possible to use those and existing knowledge of the rest of town to come up with that broad sort of initial standard for the whole district.
I think that's a good idea, pushing that into 2025. I think that's going to align with staff capacity after Alex Lewis starts next week, and he's more trained as an architecture background, so be kind of steering him more towards historic preservation and certificates of appropriateness, kind of centric, and me kind of working on like bigger like land use and zoning projects and code projects. So he'll be well trained, a lot of experience working with this group, for a year or so going into a project like that.
That sounds fantastic. Any other comments on that or any other goals?
The other thing I mentioned on that is we would have to most likely work with a consultant to draft some standards. And, it's not going to be a request into a first city council budget,
Okay,
for 2025. We're looking at 2025.
yeah, so that's something where we need to plan in advance to sort of make that ask and make the case for that ask. Alright, it's good to know.
Everybody agrees to move that to 2025? I can pull that off this year and then just keep it.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good. Alright. Anything else or
Well, are we
Sure.
making any progress on number 4?
number 4?
That seemed sort of like it was in the purview of the Main Street program to some extent.
It
Yeah,
kind of was originally. We also, talked about as a city, we are the pass-through for some of those grants. And as you know, Bill Funkwich has gotten a grant. He's going to apply for a bigger grant because it was just for construction documents. And he's utilizing and taking advantage of the tax credit as well. So I think you're making more progress on that than you realize because word of mouth is what's getting people to know that there are tax credits out there. Also, if we end up having a workshop on the tax credits and I know that we also, and this is further down because we're too preoccupied with the grants to do our project right now, but we also talked about loan grant and some of the other grants that we could be the gatekeeper or the money holder. People could come to us and that's a few years back, because we have to be able to set ourselves up as the person. But I still think that we made progress on this without even realizing. We can take it a step further and become a way to get grants and hold that money and let people come to us and try to get grants to rehab their, projects on Harrison. But it's not as, you've already done a lot just by talking about tax credits. You're already getting people in the community that are looking into it and saying, hey, I can get those too.
And I think Main Street was based mostly just letting people know those were available. I think most of the building owners have been driving that themselves. I would also ask if we should be looking at the Urban Renewal Authority. And when they start to develop funding, I don't really understand the whole TIF process, but I think there are mechanisms for people to get grants or to spend their own money to be reimbursed by that fund when it actually gets money.
Yeah.
So it could be we want to set a meeting up with that group to understand more what they're doing, more what we're doing, and how we can work together to help some of the historic buildings. And their map is basically the same as Main Street's. It includes Harrison and a block off and the rail yard area. And at some point, that should be a good source of funding.
yeah, I think that's a good idea because it would be good for us to understand that a little bit better and just sort of know what's going on.
And I know Mary Logan talked to us a lot about too. That's one thing he was really trying to get going before he left and he didn't do just one thing and he tried more of it. His thought process was that thing would help us get a fund together to try to help people do the rehabilitation.
The rig is getting built out, may not be going as fast as people expected. Commercial development, there's not a lot of, concurrent residential and commercial development right now. There's a couple of projects that just gonna either make it a break phase at this point in terms of commercial projects along facing the highway. And there are some larger, residential projects, like apartment building, we just got the building permit. So all of those things should go towards increasing the tax base beyond the original assessment, which then would be, rolled into the lower fund, but, that development could go faster. In the market, where interest rates and all those things. We could see some, if things were changing in the market, we could see some commercial building coming rapidly along the highway. saying phase one fully built out. And then if the developer were to finish the retirement process for phase two, then phase two could be entitled to construction. And there's a long way to go with phase two in terms of the details. So there's some things there that aren't going as quickly as they could for a variety of reasons, which affects, that, basically that tax.
And I think if we're gonna keep the goals, then if we can show some progress, that's good. If we are not making progress on goals like number 3, then we should get them off this list.
Mm,
But it sounds like there's some progress on 4, at least a little.
yeah, and then after we see the interest at the research your home workshop, we can potentially then gather information and interest and do a session on specifically on tax credits, maybe later in the summer. Okay. So then finally, any public comment on items not on the agenda? Yes, Steve.
Okay, so it's on the file again. I have two comments. First, the Tabor Opera House took out some closets some time ago. And I was able to get one of the closets because they were outside, but I wasn't able to get the doors because the doors were taken by Main Street to make artwork out. And recently, there is a nice stack of lumber underneath the fire escape there on the south side. And I asked Sarah Dallas about that, and again, Main Street is going to get that to make artwork. There's two concerns here. One is, why are these renovations going on inside the Tabor Opera House with these things? Were they approved by the HPC or are they just being winged on it?
It's interior.
And then the other thing is, I think people should be able to bid on these things, and they shouldn't just go to the girl club that is the Main Street thing because it gets directed down. This lumber is valuable and I could use that for my projects. It looks like it went past a minute already. The other thing is sidewalks. There are 3 sets of sidewalks in front of Tabor, in front of the Scarlet, and in front of the Bank Annex building that have the original sandstone. And the one at the past, I think building owners were careful not to use salt. One of the things I liked about Ken Berger was that he didn't want any salt used there, and I didn't want salt used either because at the time I had 3 dogs. And I didn't like to walk through the salt, not good for the dog's health. But it's also not good for the sidewalks. Now, it seems like all the building owners, except the Bank Annex, the Tabor and the Scarlet, are using salt. And I think that degrades the sandstone. I have to do some more research on this. These are my gut feelings at this time, because the sandstone in front of the Scarlet is especially damaged in some places where it's like swirling out. You can see that instead of being flat, there's like a, depressions happening. But Scarlet has been utilizing different people to remove the snow. And as you walk up the steps going south, you'll notice that first piece of sandstone has some fresh divots in it that are very small, but they were used to chop out the ice. And then if you walk down a little further, this is a little older, the damage is obvious that somebody was chopping at it, and they're pretty deep gouges. So hopefully, I'm going to talk to the Scarlet owner today. He's supposed to be there, and maybe we can. I'll do some more research on salt. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have reached the end of the agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission.
I will second that.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Hey, the May 14th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission is adjourned at 5:09 PM.